Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be checking out a reverb that you no doubt will have come across at some point in your guitar career, but potentially will have just brushed off and focused on the flashier, more expensive models. But I think this pedal is a really great all-rounder and a great choice if you're in the market for just a good, solid balance of affordability, but still a good sounding digital reverb. I'm of course talking about the Boss Reverb RV6. Now, as I said, this is a digital reverb, and so this means we've got quite a lot of options on this pedal for different sounds. Now I'm going to do my best to show off as many of these to you as I can, but this video might be a little bit faster paced than you're generally used to. So let's not waste any more time and let's get into the pedal. So the pedal itself is pretty straightforward, as we've come to expect from Boss, with 4 controls. You've got the effects level control, which, as it would suggest, is the level of the effect. I should note here that, slightly disappointingly to me, this doesn't give you the option to go completely wet and completely cut the dry signal. This isn't a blend, this is just the amount of level of the effect sort of on top of, if you know what I mean. We've then got the tone control, which just rolls off the sort of bright top end. We've got the time control, which controls how long the reverb goes for. And then the final pot gives us all of our different flavors of reverb. These are the settings you heard for the modulation mode, with a long time, which is the way I like my modulated reverb. But for the rest of this, I'm just gonna dial the time back to 12 o'clock like the rest of the controls, just so that we've got a consistent basis to go through all of the different reverbs. Of course, on top of these controls, you also have multiple inputs and outputs, so you can run a stereo rig with this pedal, or get a bit more creative and run multiple different amps or guitars or whatever through this pedal. And of course, you also have an input to control the pedal with an expression pedal. Today I'm playing a Fender Telecaster, and I'm running through the pedal and into the front of a Boss AC15. Of course, this pedal can also be used in the effects loop, and that is normally where I would prefer to use it. But for the sake of this demo, I want it to be as inclusive as possible, and of course not every amp has an effects loop in it. So I'm going into the front of the amp just for that. With the reverb switched off, the telly into the Vox sounds like this. And then just a reminder of what the modulate setting on this pedal sounds like. It's something like this. Next we'll move on to the spring setting, which is your more traditional amp sounding reverb, and that sounds something like this. So as you can hear, it's a pretty solid representation of a spring reverb, and it does get that sort of weird, high, slightly jangly thing that you get with a spring reverb. The next setting we have across is the plate reverb, and this is more like a studio reverb effect, and it sounds something like this. Again, a really great solid sound. The next option we've got is hall, so this is a bit more of a, not quite cathedral, but a bigger room sort of reverb. That sounds something like this. Following on from the hall, in a similar vein, we have the room, which is a similar vibe, but just a bit smaller sounding. And then next round, we've got dynamic. And this is a reverb that adjusts its depth based on your sort of touch sensitivity, so how hard you pick. So as you can hopefully hear, when I'm playing fingers or picking less aggressively, it's a little bit more mellow, whereas it gets bigger and sort of boomier when you dig in and play hard. Then our penultimate one is shimmer. Now our penultimate one is shimmer, and that sounds something like this. So that's more of a synthy kind of thing, which personally I'm not a big fan of. I think that sounds a little bit cheap and just clunky, but that's just my personal opinion. But for me, that's the weakest of the settings on this pedal. And then finally we have the plus delay setting, which, as you'd expect, is more of a delay. So there you go, there's a brief overview of the Boss RV6. I've tried to keep this one fairly concise whilst giving you a flavour of all of the different reverbs in it. I felt that this video had the potential to turn into something very long-winded if I spent a long time playing around with each effect and all of that sort of stuff. But I hope it's done a good enough job of representing to you what this pedal is really like to use. Now, chances are that you will have stumbled across one of these, or maybe an RV5 or something similar, during your guitar journey, so let me know down in the comments about that and what your thoughts are on this pedal. But that's going to just about do us for today, so as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.